When people begin the journey of adoption, they often do so from a place of deep emotion, hope, longing, and sometimes heartbreak. It's this very vulnerability that scammers prey on. They know how to tap into your desire for a child or your fear of losing one, and they build false relationships around that. Whether you're a hopeful adoptive parent or a mother in crisis, these con artists are experts at sensing emotional need and turning it into opportunity for exploitation. One of the most heartless tactics used in adoption scams involves individuals posing as pregnant women looking to place their child for adoption. They'll go to great lengths to appear legitimate, sending fake ultrasound images, providing fraudulent medical updates, even faking identities or using actors to play the role of supportive friends or doctors. These lies are layered, convincing, and crafted specifically to earn your trust. What starts as hope soon becomes a string of manipulated emotions and broken expectations. As the scam unfolds, money begins to enter the picture. Requests for financial help appear casual at first, maybe a little assistance with rent, groceries, or medical bills. But once the first payment is made, it rarely stops there. You're led down a path of repeated, urgent needs, each framed as essential to the health of the baby or the well-being of the birth mother. The emotional weight of the situation clouds judgment, and before you know it, you're emotionally and financially invested in a story that was never real to begin with. These scammers don't just steal money, they steal emotional security. Many of them groom their targets by forging personal connections quickly. They'll start calling you mom or dad, send heartfelt messages, and build a sense of intimacy that feels real. But that emotional closeness is part of the manipulation. It's a tactic designed to deepen your trust and bind you tighter to their web of lies, so that when things begin to feel off, you hesitate to pull away. There are also cases where entire organizations, posing as adoption agencies or facilitators, engage in these scams. These setups are sophisticated. They might have professional-looking websites, forged licenses, glowing reviews, and customer service teams that sound legitimate. But underneath the surface, it's just another scheme. They avoid legal processes, sidestep verification steps, and pressure you to act quickly. That's a dangerous game, and one that leaves people devastated when the truth finally hits. The worst part for many victims is the shame and silence that follows. They feel embarrassed for having trusted someone, for having believed in a future that wasn't real. But here's the truth, this isn't your fault. These scammers are calculated, experienced manipulators. They build trust by design. Staying quiet only protects them. When victims speak out, share their stories, and warn others, that's when real awareness begins. And it's the first step toward shutting down these cruel operations. Everyone needs to be aware of the warning signs. Adoption is a legal, structured process for a reason. Any attempt to rush it, hide it, or avoid the legal system should be questioned. Always verify who you're speaking to, work with licensed professionals, and never ignore your gut instinct. If something doesn't feel right, speak up. This is about protecting people's futures, their families, and their hope. Ending these scams begins with education and action. One of the most heartbreaking tactics used in adoption scams involves individuals pretending to be birth mothers. These scammers are skilled at creating convincing stories, often full of emotional detail, to win the trust of hopeful adoptive parents. They present themselves as someone in crisis, someone selfless and loving who wants the best for her unborn child. This image is carefully constructed to appear genuine, and it appeals directly to the heart of those longing to become parents. To appear credible, these individuals often provide fake evidence to support their claims. They may send sonograms they've pulled from the internet, stage phone calls pretending to be from a doctor, or even use stock photos to represent themselves and their supposed baby bump. Sometimes they go so far as to hold video calls from a carefully staged room, further deepening the illusion. Every detail is curated to build emotional attachment and eliminate suspicion. The manipulation often begins with casual conversations. At first, it seems like a natural connection is forming. The scammer shows interest in your life, shares updates about her pregnancy, and slowly starts referring to the baby as your child. This intentional use of language creates a sense of emotional ownership, which in turn makes the situation feel even more real. You begin imagining life with this child, and that hope becomes a powerful anchor. Once emotional investment has taken hold, the next phase usually involves subtle financial requests. It might start small, just some help with groceries or a missed doctor's appointment. Then it grows. Rent becomes due, medications are needed. Transportation to appointments gets mentioned. The requests come with emotional pressure, and refusal can feel like failing to support the child you now feel responsible for. By this point, the scammer has established a bond that is hard to break. The emotional manipulation has you second, guessing any doubts. You justify the payments, tell yourself it's temporary, and continue to believe in the promise of a child who never existed. The scammer may even reassure you that adoption papers will come soon or that a meeting is just around the corner, but each promise pushes the finish line further, leaving you drained financially and emotionally. These scams can drag on for weeks or even months, with the scammer vanishing only after you start asking too many questions or stop sending money. The emotional wreckage left behind is devastating. Families are not just out of money, they're left grieving a child they never met, betrayed by someone they trusted with their deepest dreams. The hurt lingers far beyond the financial loss, and the shame often keeps people silent. The most dangerous part of this scam is that it can happen to anyone. Hopeful parents are often so ready to love that they overlook red flags. That's why it's crucial to work through licensed agencies, verify identities, and avoid unregulated communication channels. Real adoption is a process that involves transparency, legality, and time. If someone is rushing the process, avoiding professionals, or constantly requesting money, it's a sign to step back and reevaluate. Staying informed and alert is the best defense against becoming a victim. The moment money enters the conversation in an adoption scam, it often marks the beginning of a calculated plan to exploit your trust. What usually starts as an innocent and believable request for small assistance quickly evolves into a series of increasingly urgent and emotional pleas. The scammer might say they are struggling to buy food or cover prenatal vitamins. At first, you want to help because this is the child you believe you're going to raise, but that's exactly what they're counting on. Once the first payment is sent, the nature of the requests begins to shift. Suddenly, the birth mother needs help paying rent or covering an unexpected medical bill. There's pressure attached to every message. She might claim that if she can't get to the next doctor's appointment, her health or the baby's health is at risk. The emotional manipulation intensifies, and you begin to feel a deep obligation to keep helping no matter how uncomfortable you feel. These demands are never random. They're designed to catch you at your most vulnerable moments, late at night, during weekends, or on holidays, when support systems are unavailable and you're more likely to respond emotionally rather than logically. The scammer plays the role of someone in crisis, someone counting on you to be the hero, and you fall deeper into the trap because turning away begins to feel cruel or heartless. The financial manipulation isn't just about the money itself. It's about control. Every time you send another payment, you become more invested in the outcome. You feel like you've already put so much in emotionally, financially, even spiritually, that you can't afford to walk away. This is a deliberate psychological tactic called the sunk cost fallacy, and scammers use it to keep you attached to a lie long after the truth becomes harder to ignore. Scammers often make you feel like each payment brings you closer to your dream of becoming a parent. They'll say things like, "Once I pay off this hospital bill, I can sign the adoption papers," or "This is the last thing I need to do before the baby is yours." These kinds of statements keep you hopeful, keep you paying, and keep you from stepping back to analyze the situation clearly. They are building a fantasy, and every dollar you send fuels it further. As the requests continue, your emotions are on a roller coaster. You might feel anxiety, guilt, desperation, and confusion all at once. You start to sense something isn't right, but confronting it feels terrifying. What if it's real? What if the baby is real? What if walking away means giving up the chance of a lifetime? This internal conflict is exactly what the scammer wants. As long as you stay uncertain and emotionally overwhelmed, they stay in control. Eventually, you may reach a breaking point. Either the scammer disappears without a trace, or you stop responding, exhausted and disillusioned. By then, the financial damage is often significant, but the emotional damage runs even deeper. You've been led down a false path, one paved with lies, hope, and betrayal. That's why it's essential to recognize early warning signs, rely on licensed professionals, and never let desperation override your intuition. Trust is precious, and once broken, it's hard to rebuild. Scammers know this, and they exploit it for everything they can get. Emotional grooming is one of the most dangerous and deceptive tools used by scammers in adoption fraud. It doesn't start with obvious manipulation. It begins with charm, empathy, and connection. The scammer makes you feel seen, understood, and even chosen. They may compliment your values, express admiration for your willingness to adopt, and claim they just feel a connection with you. This emotional bond is built deliberately and slowly until it feels real. These scammers are calculated in how they use language to form emotional ties. They may begin referring to you as mom or dad far too early in the process. To someone longing to become a parent, those words are powerful. Hearing them spoken directly to you triggers a deep emotional response. It doesn't just create a bond with the person speaking. It creates an imagined bond with the child, too. That's what the scammer wants. They want you to start feeling like this child is already yours. As this relationship deepens, the scammer often mirrors your emotions. If you're excited, they're thrilled. If you're anxious, they calm your fears. They tailor their responses to make you feel secure and special. This level of emotional intimacy builds trust quickly, and because it feels personal and heartfelt, it disarms your natural skepticism. You begin to let down your guard, convinced that what you're experiencing is genuine, and that's exactly when the manipulation tightens its grip. Over time, the scammer increases their demands, but not just for money. They demand more of your time, more of your emotional energy, more involvement in their life. You might start getting daily updates, texts, phone calls, or even late night emotional conversations. All of this creates the illusion of a real, developing relationship. What's really happening is you're being isolated from objective thinking and pulled deeper into their control. If at any point you start to question something, maybe a story doesn't add up or you sense inconsistency, the scammer will often respond with guilt or emotional appeals. They might accuse you of not caring, of doubting their honesty in a time of crisis. These tactics are meant to confuse you and make you feel guilty for even asking questions. It's emotional blackmail dressed as vulnerability, and it's a key strategy to keep you from walking away. Many people who have been groomed in this way describe feeling emotionally exhausted and unsure of how they got so involved. They second guess their instincts and question whether they were too judgmental or insensitive. This self-doubt is another byproduct of the grooming. It keeps you stuck in a cycle where you continue to give, continue to believe, and continue to wait. hoping that it will all be worth it in the end. Emotional grooming is not a random side effect of these scams, it is the foundation. It is a conscious, methodical tactic used to build false intimacy and control your actions. The only way to protect yourself is to stay alert to these patterns and remember that trust is earned over time and through verification, not built overnight through emotional flattery. Anyone who pushes for rapid emotional connection in a high-stakes situation like adoption should be approached with extreme caution. Scammers operating under the guise of fake adoption agencies or independent facilitators are among the most dangerous players in this dark world of deception. These setups can appear incredibly convincing at first glance. They often have sleek websites, professional-looking documents, and even fabricated success stories with photos of happy families. All of it is designed with one goal in mind: to create a false sense of security. What victims don't realize until it's too late is that these operations are often smoke and mirrors, built solely to exploit the desperate and the hopeful. These so-called agencies promise quick placements, minimal paperwork, and easy communication. They use language that reassures their targets that they've come to the right place. Their websites might list fake credentials, phony partnerships with medical providers, and glowing testimonials that were either stolen or completely made up. When you're emotionally invested in adopting, all of these things can feel like validation, but in reality, they're just part of the trap. One tactic often used by these shady facilitators is encouraging secrecy and urgency. They might tell you that a specific birth mother chose you and is ready to move forward right away, but only if you don't involve outside lawyers or agencies. They insist that keeping things private and fast is for everyone's benefit. What they are actually doing is isolating you from real legal help and shielding their fraud from scrutiny. Once you're separated from legitimate oversight, they have full control. These fake professionals often ask for upfront fees. They call them application costs, processing fees, or birth mother expenses. They claim these payments are standard and time sensitive. You might be told that if you don't pay by a certain date, the match will go to another family. This type of pressure is emotionally overwhelming, especially when you're being led to believe that a real child's future hangs in the balance. In your desire to help and protect that child, you comply. As soon as the first payment is made, the relationship shifts. You might begin receiving updates about the baby or the birth mother, all crafted to keep you emotionally engaged. But behind the scenes, the scammers are moving on to their next target using the same tactics. Some operate multiple scams simultaneously, recycling the same stories and changing only names and details. They run it like a business, feeding off of the emotional and financial investments of others. Even more terrifying is that these operations often steal the identities of real agencies, real attorneys, or real birth mothers. They forge documents that look authentic and reroute calls to untraceable numbers. If you try to verify something online, you might come across information that looks legitimate because it's been carefully manipulated. This level of deception can convince even the most cautious and educated individuals that they're dealing with professionals when in fact they're being conned. The key to avoiding these types of scams is to always verify. Never move forward with an adoption through an unlicensed facilitator. Check with state or national adoption boards to confirm credentials. Speak directly with attorneys who specialize in adoption law. Be suspicious of anyone who discourages outside legal involvement or rushes you to make payments. Real adoption is a legal and emotional process that requires transparency, not secrecy. If you're being asked to act fast or keep things quiet, that should be a signal to slow down and start asking hard questions. Ignoring the legal pathway in adoption is one of the most dangerous mistakes hopeful parents can make. The adoption process is not just emotional, it's deeply rooted in legal procedures designed to protect everyone involved, especially the child. Scammers know this, which is why they often try to bypass the system. They'll present the idea of a simple or private adoption as more affordable, less stressful, and quicker. But skipping over legal requirements is never in your best interest. It's a tactic used to avoid oversight and accountability. When someone suggests that attorneys or licensed agencies aren't necessary, that should raise an immediate red flag. These individuals or organizations may claim that involving legal professionals only slows things down or adds unnecessary expense. What they're really doing is isolating you from the people trained to identify fraud. Licensed adoption professionals follow strict regulations, conduct home studies, verify documents, and ensure that all parties are informed and protected. Avoiding them creates the perfect environment for a scam. Scammers often claim to have handled dozens of successful adoptions on their own, using personal connections or informal agreements. They may promise a faster match and say the birth mother is ready to sign as soon as money changes hands. But without legal paperwork reviewed by professionals, you have zero protection. No agreement is binding, and any payment made is essentially a gamble. If the scammer disappears or changes the story, there's no legal recourse. No case, no contract, no justice. Real adoption requires legal documentation such as consents, relinquishments, and court approvals. These documents aren't optional. They are essential for ensuring that the rights of birth parents are lawfully surrendered, that adoptive parents gain full and legal custody, and that the adoption is final and secure. A scammer avoiding this process will often make excuses, saying the documents are coming later or are being processed by someone else. Delays like these should always be questioned. One of the biggest dangers in ignoring the legal pathway is the emotional fallout. You might go months thinking everything is progressing as it should, only to discover there was never any legal foundation to begin with. You're left not just emotionally devastated, but vulnerable to further exploitation. Some scammers even cycle back to the same victims, offering new opportunities because they know the emotional desire hasn't disappeared. It becomes a cycle of manipulation that's hard to escape. It's important to remember that adoption laws exist to protect everyone involved, not just the child, but also the adoptive parents and the biological parents. Cutting corners doesn't make things easier, it puts the entire process at risk. Legal involvement may seem complex or slow, but it ensures legitimacy and accountability. It confirms that the adoption is ethical, informed, and permanent. No one with genuine intentions will discourage you from pursuing a lawful, documented path. If someone you're working with is urging you to keep things off the record, to avoid lawyers, or to move money without contracts, step back. Consult with an adoption attorney or a licensed agency before taking another step. You have the right to ask questions, demand proof, and take your time. Real adoption professionals will respect that. Scammers, on the other hand, will try to make you feel guilty or pressured for hesitating. That difference speaks volumes, and recognizing it early can protect you from a lifetime of pain. One of the most effective weapons scammers use in adoption fraud is pressure. They know that creating a sense of urgency causes people to make emotional decisions rather than logical ones. This pressure often comes in the form of time, sensitive opportunities, or sudden emergencies. You might be told that if you don't act now, the birth mother will choose another family, or that she's considering abortion unless you send support today. These messages are designed to make you feel like time is running out, and your only option is to comply quickly. Scammers use this urgency to limit your ability to ask questions, verify facts, or seek outside help. They want you so emotionally invested and time pressed that you don't stop to examine the situation carefully. When someone's future child seems to hang in the balance, it's natural to want to do whatever it takes to protect that chance. Scammers understand this emotional vulnerability and exploit it with precision. They keep pushing, knowing that desperation often overrides caution. In many cases, the pressure comes with guilt. You might be told the birth mother is scared and might change her mind unless she feels supported, or that she's being pressured by others to back out unless you step in and show commitment. These kinds of statements are deeply manipulative. They frame your hesitation as a failure to care, making you feel responsible for someone else's crisis. It creates a false sense of moral obligation, one that scammers know is difficult to ignore. The pressure can also appear financial. Scammers will often say that medical bills must be paid today, that the landlord is about to evict the birth mother, or that transportation to an appointment will fall through without your help. Every scenario is urgent. Every request is wrapped in panic. And because you're emotionally tied to the outcome, you act, not realizing you're being led into a controlled rhythm of fear and reaction. Each payment feels like you're doing the right thing when in fact, you're sinking deeper into a lie. Scammers count on your silence. When you're under pressure, you're less likely to pause and talk to someone else, whether it's a spouse, a lawyer, or a trusted friend. Isolation is a key part of their strategy. They'll say things like, "Let's keep this between us," or "I don't want too many people involved." The goal is to cut you off from logic, from people who might ask the tough questions you're too emotionally overwhelmed to consider. It's about creating a bubble that they can control completely. Over time, this pressure leaves you feeling emotionally drained. You're on edge constantly, waiting for the next call, the next crisis, the next payment. The adoption process begins to feel like a roller coaster of fear and hope, and the scammer is the one tightening the belt. You're no longer thinking about the long-term implications, you're just reacting, hoping it all ends with a child in your arms. That's the hook they keep using, but the end they're planning looks nothing like the one you're dreaming of. The truth is, legitimate adoptions never operate on pressure or secrecy. Licensed professionals provide information, guidance, and space to make informed decisions. They do not rush you, guilt you, or isolate you. If someone is applying pressure, it's not love or urgency, it's manipulation. Recognizing that difference can be the turning point between falling victim and taking control. You have the right to ask questions, take time, and protect your future. Never let anyone push you past your instincts. Identity theft and privacy violations are often overlooked aspects of adoption scams, but they can cause just as much damage as emotional and financial manipulation. When people are emotionally invested in the dream of adoption, they're often asked to share sensitive information early in the process. Scammers take full advantage of that trust. They ask for everything from your full legal name, address, occupation, marital status, and even financial details. These requests are often disguised as part of the application process, or presented as necessary to move forward with the adoption. At first, these requests seem routine. After all, real adoption agencies do require paperwork and background information. But in a scam, there are no secure systems or legal protocols in place to protect your data. Everything you send, every form, every photo, every financial record goes directly into the hands of someone with bad intentions. Once they have your personal information, they can use it to open bank accounts, take out loans, or impersonate you online, leaving you with serious legal and financial consequences. Some scammers go a step further by asking for even more detailed and sensitive documents. They might request copies of your driver's license, passport, or social security number under the pretense of needing it for background checks or court filings. You trust them because they sound professional and they've already built an emotional connection. But what you're really doing is handing over the keys to your identity, and in some cases, your future security. The consequences of identity theft are often long-term and difficult to undo. Victims may not even realize what's happened until months later, when they notice suspicious charges on their bank accounts or receive bills for services they never used. Cleaning up the mess involves a complex and time-consuming process, filing reports with the police, contacting credit bureaus, freezing accounts, and in some cases, hiring legal help. All of this adds to the emotional exhaustion already caused by the betrayal of the scam itself. Scammers also collect information they can use to manipulate you further. For instance, if they know where you live, where you work, or who your family members are, they can use that to build even deeper emotional traps. They might bring up personal details in conversation to appear more trustworthy or to pressure you into acting quickly. It creates the illusion that they're genuinely invested in your life when really they're using your private information to tighten their control. It's also important to recognize that scammers may use your information to scam others. If they've collected pictures of your family or home under the pretense of adoption paperwork, they can use those images to create fake profiles or fabricate new adoption stories. This means that even after the scam ends, your identity and image may continue to circulate in fraudulent schemes without your knowledge or consent. It's a violation that can feel never-ending, keeping you trapped in a cycle of worry and mistrust. To protect yourself, never send sensitive personal information without verifying exactly who you're dealing with. Use licensed agencies and adoption attorneys who follow strict privacy regulations. Always confirm contact information and credentials through official state or national adoption boards. Trust should never come before verification, especially when it comes to your identity. If someone pressures you to send private details without proper safeguards in place, take a step back. No adoption should ever begin with a loss of personal security. The shame and silence cycle is one of the most painful and isolating consequences of falling victim to an adoption scam. After the emotional devastation, the financial loss, and the collapse of hope, many people are left feeling embarrassed that they didn't see it coming. They ask themselves how they could have been so naive, how they could have believed the lies, or why they didn't notice the red flags. These questions become internalized, turning confusion into self-blame, and that blame creates silence. When someone feels ashamed, they often withdraw. They don't want to talk about what happened. They might not even tell their closest friends or family members. They fear being judged or pitied. They worry that others will see them as gullible, desperate, or weak. This silence serves the scammer's purpose perfectly, because the less victims speak out, the more these frauds are allowed to continue operating in the dark. Silence protects the predator, not the person who was harmed. The shame is often intensified by the nature of what was stolen. This wasn't just money, it was trust, hope, and in many cases, the dream of becoming a parent. That kind of emotional damage is incredibly personal. It touches people at their most vulnerable place, their identity, their heart, their longing for family. When that dream is shattered, victims often feel that talking about it means reopening wounds that are still raw. They may try to move on without processing the pain, but the silence only prolongs the healing. There's also a fear that others won't understand. People who haven't been through an adoption scam may struggle to grasp how deep the manipulation goes. They might say things like, "You should have known," or "That sounds suspicious," without realizing how expertly crafted these scams are. This kind of reaction, even if unintentional, reinforces the victim's belief that speaking up will only lead to more pain or ridicule. So they keep it in, trying to forget while the trauma quietly festers. Breaking this cycle is not easy, but it is absolutely essential. Speaking out is not just about justice, it's about reclaiming your voice. It's about turning pain into power and using your experience to protect others. When one person shares their story, it gives another the courage to do the same. It creates a ripple effect that can shine a light on these dark corners where scammers operate. Every story told makes it harder for scammers to hide and easier for others to recognize warning signs. Support systems play a vital role in breaking this silence. Whether it's a friend, a therapist, a support group, or an online community, having a safe place to talk can make a huge difference. When victims are met with compassion instead of judgment, they begin to let go of the shame. They begin to understand that being targeted by a scam isn't a reflection of weakness. It's a result of someone else's deception. The blame belongs with the liar, not the person who believed in something good. Adoption scams are cruel, calculated, and deeply damaging, but the pain they cause doesn't have to live in silence. By speaking out, by telling the truth, and by finding strength in each other, victims can begin to heal and help ensure that others don't have to suffer the same fate. The shame doesn't belong to those who hoped. It belongs to those who lied, and the more we talk about it, the more we make sure that hope is no longer something used against people, but something protected, honored, and eventually fulfilled. When you realize that you might be the target of an adoption scam, the most important step is to stop and reassess. Take a deep breath, step back from the emotional pressure, and begin looking at the situation objectively. It's difficult, especially when your heart is involved, but clarity begins with distance. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore the nagging thoughts or the small inconsistencies that have been bothering you. They are signals that deserve your attention, not dismissal. Begin by verifying everything. Look into the names, phone numbers, email addresses, and any agencies or facilitators mentioned. Use state licensing boards, government resources, or legal directories to confirm their legitimacy. If a person or agency refuses to provide clear answers or seems evasive, that's a red flag. Never rely solely on what someone tells you. Get independent confirmation. It's okay to ask questions. In fact, legitimate professionals expect you to. They understand how important trust is in the adoption process. If you've already sent money, stop any further payments immediately. Contact your bank or credit card company to report the transaction and explore any possible ways to recover funds. Save all records of communication, including emails, text messages, receipts, and screenshots. This documentation may be critical if you choose to report the scam to authorities. The sooner you act, the better your chances of limiting the damage and helping others avoid the same trap. Report the scam. This step may feel overwhelming, especially when you're still processing the emotional weight of what happened, but it's essential. Contact your local law enforcement, the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center IC3, and the Federal Trade Commission FTC. You can also report adoption, related scams to child welfare departments and adoption oversight boards in your state. Even if you feel like justice might not be served immediately, your report could help build a larger case against the scammer and protect future victims. Educate yourself and others. Learn about the typical signs of adoption scams so you can recognize them more quickly in the future. Share your story with trusted circles, whether that's friends, family, a support group, or through online platforms. You may feel exposed at first, but your experience could be the very thing that prevents someone else from being deceived. Creating awareness is one of the strongest defenses we have against these emotionally manipulative schemes. If you're still pursuing adoption, move forward with caution, not fear. Work only with licensed professionals who can provide verified credentials. Ask for references. Speak to other families who have used the same agency or attorney. Make sure there is a paper trail and legal structure supporting every step. Real adoption is thorough, respectful, and never rushed. It's okay to be cautious. It doesn't mean you've lost hope. It means you're protecting it more wisely now. Most importantly, be gentle with yourself. Falling victim to a scam does not make you foolish. It makes you human. It means you cared deeply, loved fiercely, and believed in something beautiful. Those are not weaknesses, they're strengths. Let your healing begin not with blame, but with understanding. Let it lead to action, clarity, and eventually renewal. Because while a scam may steal your trust temporarily, it does not have the power to destroy your purpose or your dream. You can rebuild, and you will.